Running a brokerage is hard work, so whether you're focused on building your own sales pipeline, hiring the best agents, leveling up your team's production, or protecting culture you've built, you're in the right place. Real estate brings the challenges, and we share the solution. Welcome to the show dedicated to broker entrepreneurs. Welcome to the Brokerpreneur Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Brokerpreneur Podcast. I'm Dr. Ben Spears, the Doctor of Flow. I'm here as usual with the big guy, Matt Vig. Matt, bye. How's it going, Matt?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. I knew something had to come back up about that. We couldn't have had a conversation about Stevie Vi without that coming up. That's it. That's fantastic, Dr. Ben. Doing really good. Super excited about the guest. This is a topic that is near and dear to our heart.
Yep, absolutely. Let's go ahead and bring him on because we're going to get his backstory and tell you guys why this is going to be such an amazing episode. We have Mark Iorio, who is the managing director at BCAP Partners, branding and culture, right? Alignment technology. There's so much that I know we're going to be able to pick your brain, Mark. How you doing?
Good, Dr. Ben. Good, Matt. How you doing? Great to be on the program.
We appreciate. We're super grateful you're here.
Yeah, I'm happy too. Thank you.
Awesome. So guys, before we get started, head on down there and click on the link in the description below for Brokerpreneur Not So Secret Society. It's a free mastermind we do for real estate brokers every single Friday, 12 to 1 Eastern Standard Time. We'd love to see you there to help you grow your brokerage. So Mark, branding culture. Was it one of those things where you were 5 years old and you just decided you wanted to devote the rest of your life to culture and business? Or how did this come about?
Yeah, I don't think that's the way it worked, Dr. Ben. That's not exactly what happened. I started a marketing firm back in 1987, and I was 5 when I started that. But around 2000 or so, one of our clients called us in and asked us about taking a look at their internal brand. And we were 35 people. I had no idea what the heck an internal brand was all about. We started to sign up for these conferences around the United States put on by the Advanced Learning Institute to learn about branding, internal branding, and what it was all about, how you built these internal brands, and it became culture, and learn these best practices. And we learned from the best, Tiffany and Ritz-Carlton, actually Southwest Airlines, Motorola was there. It was all these great organizations that built a brand promise and then had their stakeholders deliver on the brand promise. They became brand ambassadors in a sense. And it turned me around in terms of what I love doing, the passion behind doing what I do, because external marketing communications is fine, designing websites and brochures, and they're great. And it was a great business. It was lucrative, but it wasn't gratifying. And this is very gratifying. Fast forward 10 years later, about 10 or 11 years ago, I met my business partner and we formed BCAP. And Al was a behavioral psychologist and worked for NBC Universal in New York City doing audience research. And he was using this 4-factor model that was designed by Carl Jung back in the Actually, it wasn't designed by Carl Jung. It was the research that Carl Jung did back in the 1930s on personality archetypes. And we changed it to team archetypes. So that's how it started. And then I can go from there if you'd like.
Yeah, so I love that. So here's what I'm going to do, though, because we have this conversation a lot, right? So we define culture as the small things that you and your organization do every day. That's how we look at. We look at culture.
Yep.
Tell us. So that's a very rudimentary, in my opinion. It's a very rudimentary way of looking at it.
Sure.
I know that you've got a lot of research and a lot of details behind, in depth, explaining it a little bit better than that. First of all, if I'm wrong, correct me so that I can stop telling people that when we talk about it, and if not, if it can be expounded on, man, tell us that too, because we'd love to have just a description and understanding of why it is the way that it is when it comes to culture. How do we define that, and why does it matter in an organization?
You're not wrong, Matt. That's exactly how you define it. But the problem is a lot of companies don't know how to do anything about it. And that's where we come in. Every one of us has had in our lives a role model that we emulate, right? People that we love, someone that we maybe speak like, or we dress, or we behave. When you personify your team as though it were a single person doing its best work on its best day to deliver all of its promises and achieve all of its goals, that is when you can begin to understand the personality of the team in a sense, right? So we have this survey, and I'll get to the behavioral thing in a second, because this is the important part I'll tell you how it works in less than a minute. There's four factors, right? There are teams that are more oriented around innovation, which are more transformative, outside the box thinkers. There's teams that are much more driven. They're much more resolute in what they do. They're determined. There are teams that are more expert or more analytical or more precise in what they do. And there's teams that are more oriented around harmony, around treating people fairly, kindly, and following the rules and so on. So every single person in the organization has an opportunity to go through the survey. It's about 15 minutes, select adjectives in the survey that best describe the team when it's doing its best work on its best day. You're not wrong in your assessment when you make these choices. We plot it on the quadrant and then take an average of where everyone landed and start to build out from there. Once we get to a consensus of who we are when we're doing our best work, we start to build out what we call aligned inspirations, or they could be called behaviors or whatever you'd like to call them, commandments if you'd like. But that's how we behave as a team. Boom. So we put all those 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 commandments, aligned inspirations together. And then from a behavioral standpoint, Matt, every single person in the organization gets a copy of a professional alignment plan form. And there's 4 things on the form. One is, what commitment can I make each day to change my behavior in a subtle way to help the culture of this organization migrate closer to this promise that we make to the world? Number 1. Number 2, if I come to work as a more analytical person and we're more of an innovative organization, what knobs in my head do I need to change in order to become a little bit more innovative? That's 2. Number 3, who is in the organization as my accountability partner? Is it Dr. Ben? Is it you, Matt? You and I have to make sure that we sit down and talk 2 or 3 times a week for 5 minutes to say, hey, this is my promise. Make sure that whenever I'm doing something that is not in alignment with that, you call me out on it in a supportive way, not in a punitive way. And then the 4th thing is, which of those aligned inspirations is my promise impacting? Could be all 7, could be all whatever. And then we meet on a regular basis, because the whole idea is very much like working out or a diet or whatever, exercise. It's got to be done on an ongoing basis, these little behavioral changes. So we meet on a regular basis. We do these workshops monthly. We go around the room and ask every individual and their accountability partner how they're doing with each of the promises that they make. And over the course of time, you start to see the behavioral changes. It takes work, but you have that North Star out there. You have that stake in the ground that says, this is who we are when we're doing our best work. Boom.
So I absolutely love that. Let me try to distill some of that so I can get my head wrapped around it, because I want to make sure that I share this whenever we talk to our brokers going forward, right? Those first 4 quadrants, they directly correlate with core personalities, right? So there's 4 core personalities. We all know that there's 4 of them. Collectively, there's a whole bunch of them, right? Yeah, everybody's a little bit of all of these personalities, whether it's DISC or whether it's Code Breaker, whether it's True Colors or whatever, right? But there's some sort of core personalities. Right. So each of those different groups that you talked about were really centered around those 4 core personalities. That makes so much sense.
Yep.
And I love the accountability partner part, because let's say that let's say that Ben's in a high analytical place and his personality is high analytical, but I'm not, right? I'm just a high action. I'm that shoot, aim kind of person.
All harmony.
Right. All harmony, we'll call it. Okay. That's me. Everybody that knows me knows I'm all harmony. So now what I do with my accountability partner, if I'm with the right person, man, that helps me stay on track with the things that really do align with those core principles, to make sure those actions I'm taking every day are actually moving in that direction. So fantastic, Mark.
Yep.
Absolutely, positively love that. Such good stuff. Am I missing anything on that? Am I off track on that?
You nailed it. You nailed it, man. That's exactly right. Yep. So what happens is, because we're meeting on a regular basis, in the very beginning, 10, 11 years ago, everybody's asking me the same question. What about the metrics? What about KPIs? What about, how do I develop an ROI for this? You look at them and you say to yourself, okay, first of all, we change every single KPI in the organization. We never go to the client and say, we're going to change every KPI in the organization. But here's what happens. Because you're doing these workshops, a lot of that silo mentality starts to break down, because if the three of us are not communicating on a regular basis, we are now, because we're in this workshop together, and we're going around the room talking about our personal commitments. So that's number one. So the silos break down, the passive aggressiveness starts to go away. We start to see that happening. So there's a metric. There are metrics there, even though a lot of people think that they're soft skills. They're metrics. Now you become more productive. That's a hard skill, right? That's a metric that you can look at and say, oh, that's a KPI. As a result of productivity changing, what ends up happening? Profitability changes, right? Valuation changes. On an ongoing basis, as you measure whatever KPIs are important to you as an organization, we focus on. It's not us telling you what's important. It's you telling us what's important to you. So when that needle, that index of alignment in one of our reports, when that starts to tick up, it correlates 86% to the Gallup Q12 study, which everyone knows that the Gallup Q12, 30%, it just came out again the other day, 30% of the total population in the United States are engaged in their work. 30%. The other 70% are either disengaged or actively unengaged. So it changes all those metrics.
Yeah, and when everybody starts to work together, even the so many times when you talk to people about KPIs, if they know that they're going to be responsible for them, they keep them close to their chest, right?
Yes.
Nobody wants to take on a KPI, right? I don't want to take on a KPI that I'm going to be very openly accountable for. That's Ben's favorite KPI that I don't really care about. Nobody wants to do that.
Hey, Dr. Ben here. I hope you're enjoying this episode. If sometimes you feel overloaded or alone when it comes to building your brokerage, I want you to know that we are here for you. There's so much support available to agents, but hardly any dedicated to brokers. I want to personally invite you to schedule a complimentary strategy call where Matt will help you build a 3-step profitability plan that will immediately produce results. This is not a sales pitch. There's no obligation. Simply click the link in the description below. Now let's get back to the show.
So the first thing that people look at from the KPI standpoint is they're holding it all close to their chest. But as soon as I'm and I'll call it forced, okay, because that's a fun word to use in this scenario. Right. So as soon as I'm forced to, on a regular basis, interact with Dr. Ben, and I start to achieve that KPI, the next one is based on a more efficient environment. So that next KPI is going to be a higher level. That next thing you're going towards is going to be more efficient, and all it's going to do is drive us to work better. Mark, I absolutely love that.
Yeah,
that is just.
Yep, you're right, Matt. And in the brokerage world, there's a lot of salespeople out there, right? So everyone's competing with each other, and you want to get the next listing or the next sale or the next whatever. And with this program, the whole notion is we're working collaboratively. And we all know this, a rising tide lifts all ships, right? So if we're working together rather than against each other, sales organizations are notorious for this. And it's fine. The competition is great, but we're not competing with each other. We're competing with the other brokerage firms out there. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to become a better team collectively, and every skill set that we bring to the table is additive for our team, right?
After we get done competing with ourselves, that really is, as we all know, that's the first competition that happens. People compete with themselves first.
Yes.
And then they can learn to compete with people outwardly. And so that's absolutely, I love it. We're huge fans, as all the listeners know. Collaboration is everything, right? We think that a rising tide does raise all ships. We appreciate you. We appreciate you coming in and sharing a lot of information about that, because that's super helpful.
Yeah.
So if I'm a broker, okay, and I'm going, okay, this makes a lot of sense to me. What the hell is my first step? If I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around this, what is the first thing that they need to, other than call you, right? Of course they need to call you. That's their first step. Okay. We'll get to that in a minute. But what's their first step if they really want to look and they go, okay, maybe my culture's not the way that it would be. As a matter of fact, let's do this, Mark. I'm going to get really hyper specific on something that we have heard a lot, and let's kind of spitball this to see if we can help some of the brokers that are listening. Okay.
Sure.
So before COVID, a lot of people came in to the office and they would interact and everything. And then COVID happened and it pushed everybody to their respective corners and everybody learned to be a little bit more independent in their business. And now a lot of brokers are saying, hey, we still need a certain amount of energy. We certainly need a certain amount of collaboration together, but they're having a hard time bringing the team back together to get them to collaborate on things. They don't need to collaborate on, hey, let's everybody get together and help Betty Sue with her listing. I don't mean that. But as a team, as a brokerage, how can they start to get their team back together? What could be a first step that would help them do that? Because that is what's going to be their culture and that is what's going to be portrayed in the marketplace.
Yeah. They can ask that question of each of the team members, Matt. They could say, listen, I want you to think about the team as though it were a person. This team is a person, right? How would you describe it? Throw some adjectives out there. Find those 4 quadrants, words that there's a thesaurus. It's proprietary to us, but you can imagine what those words are. Teams that are more innovative use words like creativity, transformational, outside the box thinking. The teams that are more resolute, that are more driven, that are more determined, find synonyms that work there. Talk to your team about that. Go into the other 2 quadrants and write down those words and start to see how heavy they are in each of the 4 quadrants. Maybe that's the start. But let me address one other thing that you just mentioned, and that is this whole idea of virtual cultures. Look, the whole notion, everyone knows that the pandemic screwed a lot of things up in business. But wherever you are in the world, as soon as you put that brokerage hat on, right? I don't care who you work for, ABC brokerage firm. If you're at home, if you're in the office, if you're on the road, if you're in Cancun, I don't care where you are. The minute you put that hat on, that's your culture. You behave that way. You speak that way. You write emails that way. You interact with your clients that way, with new whatever. I don't care where you are when you're working for that organization, even if it's virtually. It's a little more difficult virtually, I get it. Or if you're physically in the building, that's the culture.
Love that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's so. Go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt you. I thought you were going to say something. So let's say I'm a broker and I have 12 agents. Right. I think that's something that I can easily get to those 12 agents. I can ask them these things. We have brokerpreneurs that work with us that have 600 agents.
Yep.
How's that even done? I guess is what I'm saying. I know you work with organizations that probably have tens of thousands. Mm-hmm. How do you align a culture over that size of a company?
I'm not going to kid you, Dr. Ben. This is not easy work. This is hard work. So for the 600-person brokerage firm, what we would ask the leaders of the brokerage firm to do is to take a cross-section of each of the maybe regions or groups or a cross-section of the population. We're not going to give the survey to 600 people. That's just unwieldy. And take maybe 30 of them and do a survey there and then cluster that, figure out who we are as a team. And once we understand who we are, we pass that around to the 600 people and say, look, we're going through a process. If anyone has any major objections, let's go through that now. And then as we work through the aligned inspirations, we try to cull that list of 30 down, because have you guys ever tried to work on a document with 20 people or 30 people? It never works. So we try to hone that down to maybe 5 or 6 people who can help write the aligned inspirations. And we guide the whole process, right? So then once we have that under control and it's codified, we get it out to everyone else in the organization, all 600. So this is who we are when we're doing our best work on our best day. And some people might object. Some people might have some issue with it, but it's not so off base that someone's going to say, oh, I quit. Now, when it comes down to the PAPs, the professional alignment plan forms, and the accountability, sometimes people will look at this and say, I'd rather be raking sand in the Bahamas. I'm out. And that's okay. There is nothing wrong with that. They just don't feel like they fit the culture of the organization. And they self-select out of the process.
I love it, and that's fantastic, and it's great that they raise their hand that way,
Mhm.
because now instead of them hiding inside the culture, they've they've proven that they're outside of what the culture is trying to accomplish.
Or worse, Matt, or worse, they sabotage the
Oh
culture.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, yeah, we've had plenty of those over the 200 and some companies we've worked with. And yep, it's anyway.
Yeah, I love it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you one success story, and then Ben's going to talk to you about how people can get in touch with you if they want to learn a little bit more. But I'd love to hear just one success story, the results that you've had with somebody that have just been really great results. And we get it from a big picture standpoint, trying to get everybody involved, whether it's a small company you want to share or a large company. We're okay with whatever you want to be able to talk to us about some results that somebody has had. And we get it that a camel is a horse by committee, right? And so we know that when you've got a lot of people that are involved in a lot of things, not everybody is going to be on the same page. And some people's input, it's valuable, but it doesn't carry the same line of what everybody is trying to accomplish because it's their own line. So
Yeah.
I know you've had to deal with some of that. So tell us about a success story that you've had with somebody that you've helped them see the light, for lack of a better way of putting it. I don't know how else to explain it. You had to turn the lights on for some people.
Yeah, no, there's a lot, so many. God, and I don't mean to come across as boastful, but the one that really, there's a couple that stand out. One was a senior living institute located in New Jersey. We helped them not only rename the organization, but shed some of the less effective assets that they had, dig out of a debt situation that they were in with a bank, and really shed some wonderful light on who they are, this new emergent brand, this new emergent promise that they were making to the community, to not only the banking community, but customers, caregivers. They had a lot of CCRCs, continuing care retirement communities, which are very expensive, and they were able to fill these up as a result, in my view, of the whole new refresh, the idea that they really are delivering on something very different. They showed the community something that they hadn't shown them in the past, and it was really pretty remarkable. I told the president, we were playing golf one day, and I said, Gary, you're going to have a very different relationship today or a year from now than you have with the bank today. And that came true. And it's,
Love it.
to me, it's very gratifying to see organizations become a better version of themselves and the people behind it as well. So that was a hell of a story.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I love hearing that. And I know our listeners love hearing stories like that as well. They probably want their own story too, Mark. And I want to make sure that they know how they can get connected with you and learn more about BCAT. So if you don't mind, share a few different things. I'll make sure we put these in the links in the description below.
Yeah. Dr. Ben and Matt, thank you very much. It was great. It was an absolute pleasure to be with the two of you today. And you're fun. Your questions are great and they're very insightful. I'm easy. It's Mark.Iorio, and that's IORIO at getbcat.com. So GETBCAT.com. You can blow up my cell phone. I don't care, especially if you're going to be a client.
Love it.
At 609-577-4306. That's a New Jersey number. I'm still in Jersey. And you can get me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. There's a number of Mark Iorios, but I'm the best looking one out there. So you can find me on LinkedIn. So,
Yeah, I love it. Well, I'll make sure that I put all those things in there. And I can't stop thinking about raking sand in the Bahamas. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, Matt in this podcast has said he's forced to interact with me.
Stop, man. That's our culture.
And I'm like, you know what? If it's at a golf course, raking sand in the Bahamas doesn't sound like a bad gig.
That's not a bad gig, man.
But I'm so grateful for you coming on the show, and we'll have to have you on later on down the road as well. Thanks a lot for sharing your knowledge.
Thanks, Dr. Ben. Thanks, Matt.
Absolutely. Guys, you know the routine. Click on all the things and connect with Mark Iorio down in the links in the description below. After you've done that, scroll on down just a little bit more and click on the one for Brokerpreneur Not So Secret Society. It's our free mastermind that we do for real estate brokers every single Friday, 12 to 1 Eastern Standard Time. We just get in there and we talk about growing a real estate brokerage. It's a lot of fun. It's free, but you got to register to get that login link every Friday morning. Matt, we bring on amazing guests like Mark for one reason and one reason alone. Tell them what that is.
Man, we just want to be part of your win.
See you
Thanks.
guys.